Hey YouTube, as you can see now I've got color on the cabinets, or at least some of the cabinets. I did the upper cabinets and also the pantry and the oven cabinet, and it is a cream color. It almost looks yellow compared to the white primer that was there, but I think a lot of it has to do with just the way the lighting's set up, and it is a little bit yellower than I expected, but I think it'll still look good once we get all the other colors in there. When I started doing the priming of it, I wanted to do 2 coats, and I wanted to get a good coverage on it, and then I was going to go ahead and caulk all the seams that are in the crown molding areas to seal that up. And because what I'm planning to do is actually, rather than use the lacquer on the crown molding, I'm going to go ahead and use latex paint. In any case, what we were doing was priming it and then going ahead and caulking it. But what I ended up finding out was, as I was priming, the air from the HVLP gun was getting down into it was getting into the crack areas where I had sanded. And what happened is the sanding dust would get into these cracks, and when I painted, the air was kicking up that sand, that dust, and getting it on the primer. And so it was drying really rough. It was really almost like 60 grit sandpaper on the primer. So I had to do a lot of sanding to get that off. And then I primed it again. But before I primed it the second time, I actually caulked everything, caulked all the seams on the inside, and then caulked the crown molding like I had wanted to do. It ended up turning out a whole lot better. Plus the sand dust from sanding couldn't get in behind there. And it was a lot cleaner once I tack clothed everything and gave another coat of primer on it. And that helped with the final coats. I was having a lot of issues with the gun, and mostly I think I ended up figuring out what the issue was. It was operator error, really. There's a vent on top of the cup on a gravity fed HVLP, and that allows a vacuum for the material to come out. Well, it was getting a lot of air and not a lot of paint coming out of the gun, and I couldn't figure out why, and I ended up stumbling across the reason why when I was opening the cup to check it, and when I put it back, I didn't put it back really tight like I had been putting it, because I was afraid that it was going to leak out the top. Well, I ended up finding out that the cap there's a vent on top, but there was a plug on it, and I didn't realize that the vent was plugged. So that was causing a lot of my problems. So I was able to fix that. I thinned the paint a little bit, and you can up to about 5%. The lacquer, you can thin it with water up to about 5%. I did about 2.5% water in mixing 4 gallons. And I started adding a little bit of water because I thought I couldn't figure out what the problem was, so I was thinking it was sputtering because it was still too thick. Come to find out it wasn't that. Every once in a while it would shoot a whole bunch of material, and then it wouldn't quit, and I was doing really light coats, so in places I was getting it really heavy. I ended up getting some runs on the paint, and you can see here, get real close, you can kind of see these runs right here, and there's some runs over here on the front, on the face, and it's mainly on this cabinet here. So I'm going to go ahead and sand those this afternoon once I get some time to do it, and then give it a final coat, and then start painting some of these other cabinets. What I'm planning on doing is bringing everything over to this side, and then putting a plastic wall up and paint everything on that side, so that this side stays protected and none of the cabinets that I've already painted get any overspray on them. The Chem Aqua, the Waterbourne lacquer, works really well. Worked a lot better than the Shellac. The Shellac tries to dry so fast that it's almost drying in the air, and that's why I was getting a lot of rough stuff, and I think it was probably too much pressure. But it's just the way that the shellac worked because it was a solvent based that had the alcohol, so it would dry a whole lot quicker. This is water based, so it takes a little more time for it to set up. So you did get times where there was running. I learned that you don't have to put as heavy a coat on. With the shellac, you put a heavier coat. This one, you got to really fog coat it pretty quickly, and just make 2 passes and that's it. Clean up on the Chem Aqua stuff. It was a lot tougher. I put it in water after I was done, but I had a lot of issues with cleaning the gun. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. I have the gun here. I was able to clean it up as best I could, but there is a lot of overspray. I cleaned it a whole lot better with the denatured alcohol. The shellac cleaned up a whole lot better than the water. This is the gun. This is the cap right now, and it is just, I cleaned it with a brush and water. It didn't really do that well, so I started using paint thinner, and for whatever reason, it just wouldn't come off. But the gun is just not pretty anymore. But that's to be expected, I guess. I tried to clean it up as best I could because I like to keep my stuff clean. The cap is not so great. Here's the vent hole that was there, and this was the plug. And it has a plug, and I don't know if you're supposed to just keep it off or maybe just keep it loose so that air can get in there. But it was pushed way down, and then I was tightening this on the cap really tight, and so it just was not allowing any air to create a vacuum so that material can shoot out. But lesson learned, and so hopefully things will go a lot smoother next time. Also, some techniques that I learned when I was spraying. I was actually trying to keep the overspray down. When you're spraying inside cabinets like this, it just wants to bounce back and come out, and then you get a lot of overspray in the air. What I was doing was I was turning the air pressure down so that it wasn't blowing so hard, and then I also was turning the pattern down so that it was shooting more of a jet rather than a wide spray fan, and that way I can stand back from it so that it wasn't like right in my face, and that kind of gets the paint there, but it doesn't let it blow back so much because of the air pressure being down. So that helped a little bit, but then also making sure that you've got fans. Like this is a pretty small fan. I had it already, so I'm using it. Taped around it, but then I also bought another 20-inch box fan to kind of get some of that air out, and I taped everything off to make sure that no overspray was getting in the rest of the rooms of the house. But definitely need to have that because it, especially if you're spraying, you definitely want to get those fumes and things out, and just getting air circulating through the room to let the paint dry, to get it to dry. So. And that helps, get that overspray out of here so that it doesn't settle on your finishes. So that's what's going on right now. Next thing is to go ahead and finish up, fixing these mistakes here, and then start painting some of these other pieces that I have. Hopefully, be able to get these done the next 2 or 3 days. And maybe I'll shoot another video with me doing some of these cabinets so you can kind of see how this Chem Aqua water-based lacquer is going on. Hopefully it stands up. They say it's supposed to be for kitchens, and that's what they're using now rather than the other. So these products are low VOC products and able to do in residential areas. So. So far I'm happy with the way, with the way it lays down. It's fairly smooth. It's not too shiny. It is a low gloss, so it's kind of like a satin, between a satin and a semi-gloss, which is what I wanted. But so far I've been happy with the way the product lays on. Hopefully I'll get better at it, and I'll be done with it, and then it'll be on to doing the floors. Next project. That'll be the next step. All right. I'll talk to you soon.